On WNYC, and now we'll wrap up our Membership Drive mini-series on finding your personal style. And today we get practical. Our guest is Derek Guy, the writer behind the blog Die Workwear, or is it Die Workwear? I'll ask him in a second, which is also his handle on Twitter and Blue Sky, and he's a contributor to the clothing-oriented site Put This On. He's known for breaking down why some outfits work and others don't, often focusing less on trends or brands and more on proportion, construction, drape, things like that. So in our last few minutes today, we'll get some wisdom from him about how do you build a wardrobe that works in real life, especially on a budget. Hey, Derek, thanks for doing this with us. Welcome to WNYC.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Did I say the name of your blog with the right feeling? Should I be saying Die Workwear?
Yes, I suppose both is fine. I started that blog many, many years ago and came up with a ridiculous name that makes no sense, and now I'm stuck with it. So
that's about men's clothing in particular, right?
Yes.
So in many of your posts, we see that you emphasize proportion, like I said in the intro. That's like trouser rise, jacket length, shoulder width, more than brands and things like that. So what should people be looking for visually when they try something on that maybe not every guy thinks to look for?
Well, the short and long of it is that I think of fashion as a kind of social language. So I don't think there is, one way to dress, and I don't think there's only one way for pants to fit or, whatnot. I think if you start with the premise that dress is a type of social language, and there are many different types of languages today, each shaped by history, just as we're conversing right now in English in a structured manner so that we can communicate with each other, every aesthetic is going to have its own rules that govern its kind of aesthetic. So I think when you're out shopping, it helps first to figure out what kind of aesthetic are you going for in terms of cultural aesthetic. Are you into preppy clothes? Are you into workwear, punk, avant-garde? Are you inspired by, the way artists have dressed in the past, musicians, academics? These kind of archetypes. I think when you have that goal in mind and you have a certain aesthetic that you're drawn to, use that as a guide to figure out how things should fit, how to combine colors, what's the role of textures in that look, so on and so forth. It's not, I think when guys are just starting to shop for things, they want to know, okay, these are like the 5 things to look for, but it's actually, like how suit trousers should fit is not the same as how jeans should fit. And how jeans should fit may vary depending if you want a very rugged, kind of workwear look, if you like, 1980s and 90s hip hop, if you like prep, all of these aesthetics are going to have different ideas of how jeans should look.
And you've written about how popular cuts like very slim fits, which could be one of those jeans approaches, or a very low rise trousers can throw off proportion. What's an example of that?
Well, we're in this moment where in the early 2000s, slim fit was all the rage because everyone wore baggy clothes in the 90s. And now that everyone wears slim fit clothes, looser kind of cuts are coming back into fashion. I would encourage people to just completely detach from that kind of conversation. I just don't think it's a useful conversation. And instead think of, again, in terms of how you want to dress. If you look at old photos of Lou Reed, he wore skinny jeans, skinny low-rise jeans with boots and bomber jackets, chambray shirts. If you look at, I was just looking at an old issue, I think it was published in the 1960s. There's an old issue of Life magazine where they profiled some youths in Southern California. And those guys were wearing these like really skinny, cropped, low-rise pants with a Harrington jacket, and it had this kind of mod style to it. And I think that looks great. But if you are combining skinny pants, whether it's jeans or chinos or, something a little bit more tailored, and you're combining it with an Oxford cloth button down that's also slim, and you're wearing a quarter zip sweater, that does have a social language to it. It's often the way many middle class middle-aged guys dress today, but it's not a particularly aspirational way to dress, I don't think. So, find identities that resonate with you and figure out what are the cuts that go with that. If you want to do a more business casual look, I think, if you get a slightly fuller cut pair of pants and a button-up shirt and a textured Shetland sweater, that at least grounds it in something that's a little bit more appealing than the kind of slim fit business casual that we see today.
What you were saying about slim, then baggy, then slim, then baggy being in, is it like whatever somebody's parents wore makes you want to gag, but whatever your grandparents wore make you think, oh, that's kind of cool?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the essential dynamics in fashion, as written about by George Simmel in the 1902 essay on fashion, as observed by Pierre Bourdieu in his book Distinction. It's that people often dress in a way to signal that they are affiliated with a group, but also individuals within that group. And so that kind of taste often changes. When I was getting into fashion in the early 2000s, people were wearing slim fit because it signaled a kind of youthful Euro cool. And that was supposed to be opposed to the kind of fuddiness of kind of like middle-aged American manager. But that has completely changed now. Like middle-aged American managers wear slim fit, so that's why younger people gravitate to something.
Yeah, well, there you go. Give me one more specific tip here. If someone's building a wardrobe on a limited budget, where might you say spending a little more money actually matters as opposed to where it's okay to save?
Yeah, so there are certain things. I would say that I think everyone needs a suit because we all have to go to occasions like, funerals and weddings and whatnot. But those things are worn very, very infrequently and probably shouldn't be what you concentrate on if you're on a limited wardrobe. So that said, I think you can usually get pretty good jeans and casual shirts for pretty cheap, like pure cotton flannel button-up, chambray shirts. You can, buy used jeans for pretty cheap, and they come in so many different cuts now. It's fairly easy to find something on the secondhand market. I would say where your money goes a little bit further is shoes. It's, in my opinion, a little bit better if you can splurge on a pair of shoes made from full grain leather rather than corrected grain, because they'll look better with age. It's also better to spend a little bit more if you can on knitwear, because cheaper knitwear will be made from shorter fibers, which will be prone to breakage and then pilling, and they're also prone to stretching out. It's also, if you can, splurge on a really nice piece of outerwear, because often if you're wearing, let's say like a Champion sweatshirt and just normal pair of Gap or even Levi's jeans or something, you can look really good with, let's say a really nice raglan sleeve overcoat. So spending more on outerwear, knitwear, and I think shoes are usually a bigger bang for your buck than, going all out for some really expensive button-up shirt.
Hey, before you go, in like 30 seconds, if you can do it, and I guess kind of relating to, the idea that your parents are uncool, but your grandparents are cool, you use a photo of Elliot Richardson, who served as U.S. Attorney General under Presidents Nixon and Ford, as your avatar on social media and the Dye Workwear blog, I see. Why Elliot Richardson?
I really admire his style. I have a penchant for classic American style, and I think he wore, in the 70s, he wore this long point collar that was not particularly part of that classic Ivy style look, but he wore a soft-shouldered, suit and sport coat, hook vent, dartless front, these really tasteful ties. I think if you have a particular fondness for the beautiful history of classic American style, which involves, all of these multicultural groups coming together to form something, Elliot Richardson just wore that aesthetic really well.
And I thought it was because he resisted the autocratic takeover of Richard Nixon.
Great, it's something much more superficial.
Derek Guy, the writer behind the blog Dye Workwear, which is also his handle on Twitter and Blue Sky, and a longtime contributor to Put This On. You might know him as the menswear guy online. Derek, this was fun. Thanks for some time today.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Since WNYC's first broadcast in 1924, we've been dedicated to creating the kind of content we know the world needs. Since then, New York Public Radio's rigorous journalism has gone on to win a Peabody Award and a DuPont Columbia Award, among others. In addition to this award-winning reporting, your sponsorship also supports inspiring storytelling and extraordinary music that is free and accessible to all. To get in touch and find out more, visit sponsorship.wnyc.org.